So Reginald Scott, please keep doing what you're doing. It's valued.
Hello everyone, Reginald Scott here. Welcome to the video. Great to see you all again, and I hope you're all having an absolutely awesome day. Today I've got a bit of a reaction video to something I found on YouTube. I think you're going to enjoy this. I certainly have already partially enjoyed this video. I watched the first 3 minutes and I thought, this is fantastic. I've got to share this with my audience. It's Bike Fit James. I very rarely agree with anything Bike Fit James has ever said in the past. I know him from Cade Media, which is sort of YouTube bicycle slop. But honestly, I'm astonished by how much I agreed with this guy in the first 3 minutes of this video. So I stopped the video and I went, let's watch it together. Now, if you want to skip ahead to that sort of commentary part of this video, I will leave timestamps below. For the rest of you, I'll give you the introduction. As always, folks, thank you very much for clicking on this video. Please do like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share with a friend. All right, I also wanted to say to you guys, by the way, thank you so much for being such awesome viewers. I don't say this enough, but I am so proud of the people that watch this channel. I really am. Like, there's other channels out there which are more successful than mine, and I would love to be more successful. I would love to have more viewers, and I'm trying hard to make that happen in my own way. You know, I'm not going to compromise on my standpoints, but if I did, I would get more viewers. But, you know, I'm hoping to grow the channel slowly over time. But the advantage of that is I seem to be collecting the best group of viewers out there. Like, the comments that you guys make are absolutely fantastic. They're always very reasonable, very intelligent, very well thought out. I am so thankful for the people that actually watch this channel and view this channel regularly. And even those people who are regular critics of mine that constantly comment on my videos, and they more often than not, they're critical of my viewpoints, but they're so reasonable about it. And they are, you know, even though I disagree with them, they make pertinent observations that are reasonable. Okay, you know, just because we disagree, they're still reasonable. And something else that I see, I just wanted to thank you for this, but when I see you guys on other channels defending me, so if somebody has a go at me on another video and you guys, you know, write a comment on it saying, well, actually, no, Reginald Scott didn't say that, or you're taking him out of context, or whatever, you know, you're defending me, I notice you are so polite and reasonable when you do it. You know, you call out that people are being dishonest, but you do it in such a pleasant way. And thank you so much for doing that, because it makes me feel proud that that is the kind of viewers that I have. And thank you so much for watching this channel, and thank you so much for being that way. I really appreciate it, and keep it up. Thank you so much. Okay, on with the show. I just had to say that because I don't say it enough. I don't say how honoured I am to have you guys watch. So let's go to this. So this is Bike Fit James, 11 things I hate about cycling. I'll give you a bit of background. So Bike Fit James, I very often disagree with him on bike fitting things. Now, I'm a bike fitter, but I'm not as experienced as he is. I'm not as technical as he is, but I have done bike fitting. And I often find myself disagreeing with his opinion on bike fitting. I'm sure we'll get onto that later. And I also disagree with him about physique saddles. I like physique saddles. I think physique saddles are great, but he often slags off physique as a company for their saddles quite regularly. So we disagree on that, and so those are the only two things I knew about the guy for a long time.
Number one, the elitism and the superficiality of the modern day cyclist. What I mean about the elitism of cycling is, like, cycling when I first got into this sport was all about how hard you could put on the pedals, how fast you could descend, and just there was a sense of camaraderie with the people that you rode bikes with. And perhaps there's still an element of that, but it seems to be a lot more about the stuff. But I guess this is a male-dominated sport, and we are all magpies. We like shiny. Historically, it was a working class sport. And I think somebody once wrote, and I think it might have been Bike Radar, said, we need to take the golf out of cycling. And yeah, I agree with that. Right.
I absolutely agree with him. I think golf has ruined cycling. I actually remember it happening. Like, I remember before cycling was cool in the UK, back in the 90s when I started riding. And then in the early 2000s, I think we started winning things in the UK. Like, our Olympic cyclists started winning stuff. We started, like, winning in the Tour de France with Team Sky and things. And yeah, all of a sudden, cycling became a household sport. There was household cycling British names popping up left, right, and centre. That interest in cycling was a good thing, but it also brought in a wider group of people with different mentalities. Like the people who were cycling before then, the old school riders who, are going to remember that time period like me, and the riders who were riding before me, they were in it purely for the sport, and they loved cycling. When cycling became a bit more mainstream, a bit more popular, it brought in a group of people that didn't so much love cycling, but loved the tech and loved the flex of having fancy new bikes. A lot of them were brought in by Lance Armstrong, actually, but in the UK particularly, it was when we started doing well in cycling. And a lot of those people were kind of golfer people. They came in with a golfer mentality. Now, I've got friends who play golf, one friend who plays golf that I really like, and he's a lovely chap. And there is definitely this one-upmanship mentality within golf. This, I'm better than you because I've got more money and because I was able to buy more expensive golf clubs and things. My dad used to play golf, and he quit golf because he got sick and tired of these kind of people. So, yeah, absolutely. Cycling is way too elitist. It's become, a consumerist sport. And the issue I have with what he said there is that he said, oh, we're all men. It's a male-dominated sport, and we're all magpies. I disagree. I don't see that consumerist mentality of constantly spending money on stuff as being a male trait. I see that as being a very feminine thing. I'm not like that. A lot of the old school blokes that I know are not like that. When I see customers coming in, like, wanting to finance carbon wheels, like, they'll come in, they'll want to buy a pair of carbon wheels, and they'll go to the bank to get a short-term loan of 2 to 5 years at 7 to 20% or whatever it is, to buy a pair of £2,000 carbon wheels that they can't afford to buy right now. I think people have effing lost their minds. And that's not an irregular thing nowadays, to see people who are willing to finance bicycle parts. It's insane. Like, that mentality to me is just so alien. I think it's perfectly acceptable to want nice things, and if you have the money, if you're very wealthy, then that's wonderful. Great, it's good for the economy and all that business. But what really hurts me to see is people that don't have the money spending money on things they don't need.
Been shopping. Did you buy anything? A piston engine. What'd you buy that for? Ooh, it was a bargain.
Next on my list, and it was going to have to be on my list, is bad bike fitting. There are a lot of people that seem to think that getting into bike fitting is just an easy way of making a quick buck. I'm telling you, having done it for 15 years, that it's hard work. I've got people who come through here who have had bike fits, professional bike fits. I've had to lower their saddle height by like 4 centimeters, or take half a ton of plastic out that's inside of their shoes. Stuff like that really gets on my goat, because you end up hurting people. If you were a physiotherapist and you injured somebody because of negligence, you'd be struck off. But in the bike fitting world, because of its attachment to the cycling industry, it's kind of, just acceptable to set somebody's saddle 40 mil too high and the reach 50 mil too long because of your own ideals. That has, technology or ethos from the arcane, people that assume that everybody wants to be in a really aggressive racing position, or people that assume that people want to be in a bolt upright position or a comfort orientated position. People that just assume, makes an ass out of me and you and me. Next on my list of things that I hate.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with him there. People get bamboozled and suckered in to fancy bike fits. So, for example, the turbo trainer in there, and they've got the big screen, and they've got the lasers and the pressure mapping, and everything is digitalized, and it looks very impressive. And in that chamber doing the bike fits is some lad who's in there once a week, when he's not at college, some minimum wage lad who has no clue what he's doing. Now, you can get a better bike fit from some old timer who's been doing it for 20 years and uses a blooming tape measure and a pencil, right? Bike fitting is not about the gear. Just like cycling is not really about the gear. Bike fitting is about the experience. You want a bike fitter who's got experience. You want to ask your bike fitter, how long have you been doing this? And you want to ask around people who've been to that bike fitter, did you get a good fit? Were you comfortable afterwards? And something that I try to do with my bike fits, I am different from James here in my attitude towards bike fitting, but for me, bike fitting is an organic and holistic approach, or that's the approach I have to bike fitting. For me, it's like somebody comes in and says, look, I want to race, I want a more aggressive position on the bike. If we're looking at a scale from 1 to 10, of 1 being very relaxed and 10 being the most aggressive position, I will not take you directly to 10, even if you ask me to. I'll say, look, let's go to 7, 7.5 at most. You go away, you have a ride, you tell me how you feel in a week or 2 weeks' time, okay? And if you're not happy, come back, I'll fix it. If you feel like you can go lower, come back free of charge. You've already paid me for the fit. I will adjust it for you. But I'm not going to put you in position number 10 because you might not cope well with that. And I really don't want to be responsible for giving you an injury. And I think that's the right attitude to have. Human bodies are pretty good at adapting, depending on your age. But most people can't go from 0 to 60. You know, most people can't go from 1 to 10 immediately. It's not good for you. You need to make a progressive change, I think. And bike fitting as well, people think that, or sell bike fitting around the idea that, oh, you'll get a perfect fit if you come here and then you can just go off and happily ride. I disagree with that. I don't believe any bike fitter can give you a perfect fit on day one. Perfection takes time to achieve. It's not an instant thing. So anybody who says they can sell you a bike fit and you'll be in a perfect position from day one, I think they're lying. So, there you go. That's my opinion on bike fitting. But I agree with him in general. He's absolutely right.
I absolutely loathe toe covers. They have no place in this world whatsoever. They do nothing. They don't make your feet warmer. They shred inevitably within days, maybe weeks, but usually days, possibly even hours. They're useless. They look.
Right, I've never used toe covers, and I understand what they're there for. They're there to stop the air rushing in through the vents on the front of your shoe. When I used to commute in the UK during winter, extremely cold, I used to ride in, minus Celsius conditions, like -3 or something. I would arrive at work and there would be ice in my water bottle from just riding to work. I used to put a scarf around my mouth in the morning and my nose because the wind chill factor was so unbearable, and I would have ice crystals all over the scarf afterwards from breathing out. So it was bloody cold. And I found that if I didn't wear some kind of shoe cover, not necessarily toe cover, but shoe cover, that ice cold air rushing in through the vents on my shoes would just freeze my feet. So I can understand where you're coming from with regards to shoe covers, what the usefulness of them is. However, I would say if you need to cover your shoe, go for the full size one. Go for a full size neoprene overshoe that comes up way above your ankle, it looks like a boot basically. And those are actually fantastic. And if you combine those with a waterproof set of trousers and a pair of thermal leggings, if you live in the UK, you can ride in sub-zero temperatures comfortably. And that's what I used to do. They also offer fantastic protection for when you come sliding off the bike. They protect your shoes. Like, you can shred. It's difficult to shred a neoprene boot. It will protect your shoe when you come sliding off. So I've got many battle scars on my neoprene shoe covers from when I've come sliding off on ice or something like that. So yeah, shoe covers, good. Toe covers, I can understand they're pretty useless, because the moment you get in a minor shower or go through a puddle with a toe cover, your socks are going to get soaked and your feet are going to get cold, and that's useless.
The death of the rim brake. The demise of the rim brake has resulted in bicycles becoming more expensive. And as a result, it makes the sport less accessible. There are some outliers. I mean, the likes of, is it Tri-Band make a rim brake bike? Quite a lot of brands and manufacturers make rim brake bikes. But the problem that we're seeing is a demise in the products and the equipment that you can fit to these bikes. So, for instance, I've been having a bike designed for me for my commuting bike. I've been talking to Stelbelt, and I wanted to put rim brakes on it because for winter ride, rim brakes are actually better for commuting because they don't salt up, they don't corrode, which disc brakes do if you use them day in, day out on the roads in the UK. I wanted a set of 57mm deep drop calipers, and the ones that I currently use, which I've had to rebuild 3 times now because they're 15 years old, you can't buy them anymore. So we're seeing this decline in rim brake equipment, and as a result, the bikes out there on the roads that rely on this equipment are going to be running completely obsolete. The only saving grace here is Campagnolo. They still make a reasonable rim brake group set. I mean, I've got a Campagnolo Chorus 12-speed rim brake group set on one of my bikes, and it's fantastic. And also, I mean, having descended coals in the pissing rain with carbon rims and rim brakes, I mean, I've never had a problem, personally. I'm not a fan of the demise of the rim brake. Definitely not anti-disc, but I think there is a place in the world for both. In a similar light.
Absolutely fantastic. I have never heard people say some of that. That's the first time I've ever heard anyone on YouTube say some of those things. And it needed to be said. And it's nice to hear someone who's a bit more mainstream in the world of cycling saying that. Absolutely correct. I couldn't commend him more on this opinion. Give us the choice. I am not... You see, people think that I'm anti-something or anti-this or that. Like, people think I'm anti-waxing your chain. I'm not anti-waxing a chain. I just don't think it works for me in my environment. I had somebody who commented on that video who said, I live in Egypt and it's completely dry here and I get lots of dust and sand. And I was like, yeah, fine, wax your chain. That makes sense to me. It doesn't make sense where I live in a very hot, humid environment like Brunei, which is a bloody rainforest. I need oil. If I wax my chain, it would be orange by the end of the month. I just cannot wax. I'm sorry. It doesn't work here. And, you know, same thing for rim brake versus disc brake. I honestly believe there are applications for disc brakes in cycling. If I was doing mountain biking, of course I'd be using hydraulic disc brakes. If I was doing full-on gravel biking, of course I'd be using hydraulic disc brakes. I mean, my gravel bike uses rim brakes, and I'm absolutely fine with that. But I understand the place of a hydraulic disc brake on a gravel bike. It makes sense. You've got 40, 50 millimeter wide knobbly tyres that can give you the level of grip, and you've got a heavier vehicle. A disc brake that's out the mud makes complete sense. But on a road bike, I just don't need them. And as he points out, he's come down mountains in the rain and he's never had a problem. And I get so many comments from people saying exactly that. People saying, yeah, I've come down mountains in carbon rims with rim brakes and not had a problem. I also have descended mountains on carbon rims and I've not had a problem. And yes, back 10 years ago, when I bought my first pair of carbon rims, 8 years ago actually it was, when I bought my first pair of carbon rims, they were SHIT. They were rubbish. But that was the early rim brake technology with carbon rims. The hypers, the Windspace hypers that I have, are phenomenal. They're better than my aluminium rim brakes. They're better than disc brakes that I've used. The braking on that is so fantastic. The feedback is unbelievable. The responsiveness of them in the wet is superb. I feel completely confident on them. And he points out something I've never heard anybody say, because I quit commuting in the UK nearly 10 years ago now. I've been in Brunei all this time, right? I haven't had to commute in the UK. I commuted in the UK full-time on rim brakes. I never had a disc brake bike in the UK. So, I have no experience in commuting in the UK on disc brakes. And he just said there that in his experience, disc brakes don't survive well on UK roads in winter. That's amazing. I've never heard anyone say that before. I didn't know that. I didn't know that disc brakes get all salted up and rusty if you ride them on UK roads. And he said, this is a bike guy, a guy who owns a bike shop, who's very experienced, who I often disagree with on many things. And he's saying, look, rim brakes are better for winter riding in London, where he works. So, absolutely fantastic. Massive commendation for that. And yes, give us the choice. Don't ban us from having rim brakes. And this is why, I'll tell you folks, this is why it's so important you don't give up on rim brakes. Don't give up. Keep buying rim brake stuff. Keep your rim brake bikes going. Show the industry you're not going to be bullied into buying disc brakes that you don't want and don't need. Show them. Stick two fingers up at them and say, no, I'm going to stick with my rim brake bike and I'm going to keep on scrounging the internet for rim brake parts until you have to pry my rim brakes from my cold, dead fingers, because that is my attitude. So there. Brilliant. Love it, James. Love it.
Mechanical group sets. I feel like this is somewhat dictated by frame design, with the constant will and need to put the cables inside a bike to make it more aesthetically pleasing or to make it more aerodynamic and to be completely transparent.
Let's be fair, it is mostly aesthetics. That's the main argument I hear from people when they come to buy a bike and I try and sell them a bike with the cables on the outside. The main objection is, first off, I don't like the way it looks. And the second objection is it not as aero? Like it matters to you, dude. Like, you get some guy in his 40s or 50s, my age, who's overweight, out of shape, rides once a week, slowly, in a group of mates to go to the coffee shop to eat a big fat piece of cake, and he's worried about how aero his bike is. I mean, utterly nuts. But whatever, those are the main objections. We all know it.
All of these mechanical group sets are designed with the intention of the cables being outside the frame, because as soon as you put them inside of a frame, they don't work quite as well. There is something slightly absurd about having to charge one's bicycle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, this is the thing. I often get people in the comments faffing on about how wonderful Di2 is, and I have to start to reason that possibly it's the same issue and or mentality as disc brakes. A lot of newer riders, I think, have gone straight to disc. They never tried rim brakes. And so they believe all the propaganda about rim brakes, that rim brakes don't work, and they've not got any experience of good rim brakes. So they just don't know. And I think it's the same thing with this Di2 thing. I think there are so many people now that when they start cycling, they're on Di2 from day one. They've never felt a good mechanical group set, and I think it's because I grew up on mechanical group sets externally routed, so I know that a mechanical group set externally routed is as smooth as butter, like it's perfection. But then I get people saying, oh, my mechanical group set never worked. Now I'm wondering, is that because those people have always had internally routed bikes, which yes, don't work as well. Now me, being a decent bike mechanic, I reckon I can make most internally routed cable systems work flawlessly. But it is more difficult to do, I'll give you that. You do need to lubricate the cables, you do need to maintain the cables, you will need to replace the cables more often than I do with my externally routed bike. But it's possible. But I think that might be what the reason is. I think too many people might have never experienced an externally routed bike, and so they just believe that mechanical gearing doesn't work. Absolutely agree with him. Rim brakes and mechanical rules.
Bead on. Back to my elitism thing. This is not an elitist comment or an elitist point of view. These are they always leak, and if you leave them open and invert them or invert the bike, they drip everywhere. I'm a big fan of Camelback bottles, the jet valve, because you don't have to around with this, trying to bite it or whatever, and they never leak, and you just literally squeeze it and the job's good. Whereas these, they're just cheap plastic pieces of crap.
Right, I'm going to disagree with him on this one. I've never had a problem. I say never had a problem, that's not true. Okay, I don't have a problem with the bead-ons, water bottles, that I use. And they look like those. They've just got the little pull nipple in the top, pull valve. I use BBB, and BBB don't leak. And even a lot of the BBB bottles have got a locking valve, so if you put it in a gym bag or a sports bag or in your car, or you want to tip your bike upside down, you twist the valve and it literally locks into position and it won't pull open. The seal around the screw lid as well doesn't leak. For me, the sign of a quality water bottle is it doesn't need a rubber seal inside. A lot of brands, they put a little rubber O-ring in the lid to try and seal the bottles properly. BBB don't need to do that to get their bottles to seal. All the ones I have from BBB, they don't have a rubber seal on them, and they do not leak. Now, when I first started riding, I had a bunch of different bottles, and the bottles have changed over time in the design. They used to have push tops with that little band of plastic that kept the lid on. Do you remember those? And the opening for them used to be really small, and you used to push them down, and they were a totally different shape, the old-fashioned 1980s, 1990s bead-ons. The ones now have got these big fat screw lids, so you can get ice in them and things, and you can spoon your energy drinks in and stuff. Much better design, to be honest with you. But a lot of the manufacturers don't bother to make them decent enough to seal properly. I had a bunch of SIS, Science in Sport bottles. They were junk. They leaked. I'm not a fan of the Camelbacks, and I'll tell you why. Number one, they're overpriced. Number two, they have very big openings in the top, and the openings are deep, and that little sort of split valve in the bottom is quite low down. And what I find when I see other people's Camelback bottles and types of bottle like that is I always see dirt collects inside of there. While you're riding, all the dust and sand and dirt seems to go down inside that hole. And then the first time you squeeze the water in there, you're getting all that dirt in your mouth.
Bottom bracket stands. There is no bottom bracket standard. I mean, this is probably on everybody's list of things they hate about cycling, and we are starting to see a trend to go away from the press fit bottom bracket or the multiple different bottom bracket standards in favour of things like T47, which is an oversized threaded standard. The fact in the industry that we even have the word standards to describe bottom bracket standards, it's not standard if there are 30 different standards. The fact that they're all different is wildly irritating, and even to somebody in the industry who has built bikes in the past, I've built wheels in the past, even I don't know how the hell, what bottom bracket is supposed to go in what frame sometimes. So how is a consumer supposed to know?
I mean, yes, it is frustrating, all the different standards, and I don't think that's ever going to change, because the cycling industry is a bit like the Wild West, and pretty much anybody can do what they want. And part of the reason why there are so many standards is because they keep needing to change the bikes every year, and they always want you to... Something that was invented, I believe, by the Chrysler car company, which was making people feel like their old car was obsolete. It was a brilliant marketing strategy, and I always say that the cycling industry is following the car industry. We're only a few years behind the car industry. So like when I say now you've got cars where you have to subscribe to get your car to do something, like BMW you had to pay a subscription to get the seated heats to get the seat heaters to actually work in the car. You had to pay a monthly £15 or something to get that in your BMW. That same thing is going to happen with bikes. That's what I believe. I believe that with the Di2 systems and the smartphone integration and the apps, I believe people are going to have to start paying subscription for shifting their bikes. But before we get to that, yeah, we're following the car industry. So they want you to feel like your old bike is obsolete, especially if you buy like modern carbon bikes. You know, you're trying to keep up with the Joneses. And one of the ways that they can make you feel like your bike is obsolete is by continuously changing the bottom bracket standard. So if you look at, you know, companies like Cannondale, they had their own proprietary cranks, and they had their own proprietary bottom bracket system, and then they changed it, and then they changed it again, and they've kept on changing it because they want you to feel like you're missing out. Okay, so that is how it's going to continue to be. The industry is going to keep on coming up with new stuff constantly because that's a good way to make people buy new stuff.
No, we haven't got any fixed cleats. Do you know why we haven't got any fixed cleats? Because the devil! There was an epidemic back in the late 80s, early 90s in patellofemoral injury in professional cycling, and it wasn't realised until some years later that it directly coincided with the introduction of the look black cleats. There are lots of people out there that are going to say, oh, I like my fixed cleats. Yeah, but the thing is, you like your fixed cleats because you're using them to mask a feeling, and that feeling is usually the washing around of the foot or shoe in the cleat. That ain't your cleats, it's not your float, it's the fact that your shoes don't fit, your cleats are too far forward, you've got no arch support, your feet are too close together, your cranks are too long, basically your bike fit sucks. What that actually is instability of the foot, which is driven by, as I've just mentioned, 1,000,001 factors. Fixed cleats suck. End of story. Any viewers who don't have overbearing views on this, just take my word for it, and you won't get any pain anymore.
Wrong. See, I told you that I disagree with him on bike fit issues. Absolutely, positively false. I'll tell you why. So I'm one of the use cases of somebody who uses black cleats. I use the look black cleats, and they are fantastic here they are for me, and I'll tell you why. When this cleat starts to wear on the back surface here, where it clips into the catch that holds it to the pedal, as that catch constantly hits the back of the cleat as I clip in, clip out, it actually dents the back of the cleat, and eventually I get a slight movement in the cleat and I have to replace them. And the reason why I start to get knee pain is because my foot starts moving. Now, for me, what decides whether you need, as a fitter, what decides whether you need a zero float cleat or a float cleat or a float cleat that's got lots of float is your flexibility and the way your joints work, basically. Now, I am incredibly flexible. I have something called hypo or hyper, I'm not sure which it is, dynamic joints. It's commonly known as double jointedness. So, you know, like for example, my fingers bend backwards. I am circus freak levels of flexible. And what that means is that when I'm on the bike, if I don't have a rigid shoe position, okay, that always stays in a nice clean arc like this, if I have float in my cleats that allows my foot to move around, my knee starts moving around and my pedal stroke goes all over the place, and I end up getting knee pain. I started out riding on the 4-degree cleats, I think they are the grey ones, and I started to get knee pain after a few years and well, after a few months actually, and I was wondering what to do about it. and I was looking at which way to go on the scale of float, and I actually went to more float, so I went to the red cleats, which I think are 8 degrees, and I trashed my knees. I was in agony, absolute agony. And then I found black ones, and yes, black ones are harder to set up. I think that's the main issue with black. With black, you absolutely, positively need to get them in the right position, because if they're off by even a slight degree, you will get issues. That is why it takes me so long to refine my cleat position when I buy new shoes, and why I mark up my cleat position so accurately when I find that right position. But I can ride 200 kilometers in a day and get zero pain of any kind, because these work for me. Now, if you're not flexible, if you're the kind of person who can't bend down and put their hands flat on the floor from their waist with a straight leg, or if you struggle to touch your knees, when you bend over, if you're very inflexible, and that can be genetic, that can be you're too muscular, that can be age, there can be a lot of different factors there. I would recommend you more, not less float. You want as much float as possible, because for you, being held in a rigid position, especially if that rigid position is slightly off, would be incredibly painful. So the fact that there was a lot of injuries in the 1980s as a result of people using black cleats does not mean that there's something wrong with black cleats. It means that they were using the wrong cleats. Because I can guarantee you that there's Tour de France winners who use black cleats. I can guarantee you. And I can guarantee you those guys don't get knee pain. It's down to the individual. And to hear from a bike fitter that he doesn't agree with that is quite worrying to me, because it shows that he doesn't recognize that human beings can be different. We're all individuals. We're all different. That
All different! Yes, we are all different! I'm not.
is the point of bike fitting. You've got to go by the individual. You can't make blanket statements like, oh, black cleats are bad for everybody. So there you go. Sorry, James. Mr. Bike Fit James, I disagree with you on that one. You're wrong.
Women's bikes. Women don't need different bikes. Women don't need different saddles. They don't need, maybe they do need different shorts, but they definitely don't need different saddles. They definitely don't need different bikes. They do need more choice. It's gotten a lot better. When I first started in this game, I remember Trek did a 1.2, or maybe it was a Trek 1000 actually, so it was before the 1.2, that they did a token women's bike, and it was basically exactly the same as the men's, but it was black with pink flowers on it. And the geometry was identical, it had the same 42 centimeter bar, and it was laughably bad. Had a WSD saddle on it, which was the same as the men's, but was pink. We need more sizes below a certain size range. We need more tyre options for smaller wheel sizes, namely 650B. We need more options for crank lengths below a certain size, below 160 millimeters. Shimano, SRAM, I'm looking at you. You need to make 155, 150. You probably need to stop at about there though, because below that you're starting to get a little bit kooky, but we need more options for not just women, but smaller people as well. The buy first.
Right. I disagree again. It's another bike fit issue, and I disagree again. He's right. We do need more sizes for women, because a lot of women are quite petite, and so, but a lot of men are quite petite, so we just generally need more sizes of bikes. And the best way to do that is to go custom. But I understand a lot of people can't afford custom bikes. So yeah, we do need more sizes of cranks and bike frames. I totally agree with that. What I disagree with is that women don't need women's saddles. I can't believe I'm hearing a bike fitter say that. And I'll tell you why. There are physique women's saddles, is probably why I disagree with them about physique. There are physique women's saddles that I have found with my customers are absolutely fantastic for women. I've had women, and I let people try all my saddles, don't forget, right? I have a saddle try before you buy system where people can come to me and they can try literally unlimited saddles. All the saddles I have many saddles options down there, and they can try them all. And I find 9 times out of 10, the women end up on the women's saddle. That's after they try it, that's their choice. And the reason why, shock horror, women choose women's saddles is because the women's saddle by Physique was designed for women by women. And here's what might astonish Bike Fit James. Women's bodies and men's bodies are different. Don't say it's so. Yeah, actually, men and women, we have different bodies. Not just the fleshy bits that stick out or stick in, but the bone structure, the muscle density is different, right? A woman's hips, believe it or not, James, are not the same as a man's hips.
Ah!
You have a woman's hand, my lord. I'll wager these dainty pinkies never weighed anchor in a storm.
I'll give you a clue why. My wife just had one. Babies. Babies means that women are going to have a different pelvis and a different hip, right? Okay? If you watch a woman walk down the street, she's got a different stride to a man. So think about it logically, James. Would a woman be as comfortable on a saddle designed for a man's hips as she would be designed for a woman's hips?
You have a woman's purse.
I agree with him. We do need different sizes, but we also need women's only products.
Later mentality. I've come up with this, I came up with it, it's just a thing I've said for years, it's fit first, buy later. And the general premise of the bicycle industry is that you buy a bike and then you go and get it fitted. And the problem with this is that it assumes the bike is right in the first place. It's almost the way that it's always been. And I had a conversation with Lee Prescott, who's a bike fitter up in Warwick, and we were talking about how the history of buying a bike used to be more or less what we're trying to achieve at Bicycle, where you would go and have some measurements taken and you would have a bicycle made. And with the advent of mass production, you've got these big bike retailers that are just selling bikes to people whether they're right or not. You know, stack it high, watch it fly, does it fit, who gives a And I just do not believe in that at all. I used to sell bikes to people blindly and go, oh, you know, 54 centimetre, you'd be fine. And it wasn't, it was probably too big. I was wrong, and I realised I was wrong, and I say I was wrong because I learned that there is another way, there is a better way of doing it, and that is understanding the needs and limitations of a rider first, and then fitting them. There is an epidemic level of people riding ill-fitting bikes, and you know, if you're serious about the sport, go and get a bike fit. Obviously, if you watch this channel, you know what I'm all about. You'll end up enhancing your enjoyment of the sport. This is a potentially unpopular opinion.
Right, yeah. He's not wrong. He's not wrong on that to some extent. But I think his viewpoint is somewhat unrealistic. Okay, because back in the day when you used to get measured up for a bike and have one built in steel, which, hey, I'm all for. If you want to go get a custom steel bike built for you, spot on. You won't be making a mistake. But back in those days, excuse me, that's how everything was done. It was all custom steel pretty much, and it was affordable. Custom steel bikes now are maybe not as affordable as they used to be. If somebody just needs a commuting bike like I did when I was a kid, I bought a decathlon bike for £120 and I rode to work on that. I wasn't fit to that bike, you know. Was that bike the right size for me? Yeah, it was probably okay. Here's the thing, if you're within a ballpark, you can do a lot to a bike to make it more comfortable and to fit you, you know, stem length, bar width, saddle, you know, seat post type. You can change a lot about a bike. I think for most people, unless you are a hardcore cyclist, you don't need a bike fit. And a lot of people, especially on the video I did about bike fitting, I did a video on how to get bike fit and what to do with bike fits. I think it was in my video about getting comfortable on the bike, all these different tips and tricks to get comfortable on the bike. A bike fit is not essential for most people. You can do it yourself, and if you're buying a cheap bike, there's no point in going to this guy and spending God knows how much he charges. I'm guessing it's going to be £300 to £500 to get a bike fit if your bike's going to cost you 50 quid. You know, if you're buying a second-hand bike at 50 quid or £100, there's really no point in getting a £300, £500 bike fit from some fancy boutique bike shop like this, because once he's giving you a bike fit, he's going to sell you a fancy boutique bike as well that's going to cost you 20 grand. So no, for most people it's not essential. You just need time, and you need to listen to yourself, you know, listen to your body, and you need to read and watch stuff and get advice from either older riders or more experienced riders, or just online. You can get a lot of advice and a lot of bike fitting information. Just read before you buy, right? So I kind of disagree with him. I kind of agree with him. I understand what he's saying, but I think for most people it's unrealistic. Most people, if they just want a bike for fun, to ride or to get to work, a bike fit's not that essential.
But hey, it's my list, not yours. Energy gels. I've done like triple a sense of Form 2, for instance, on nothing other than cheese and ham croissants. Maybe I'm a bit malignant and a bit of a curmudgeon, but like energy food in general is overloaded with sugar. It tastes like the gels are like taking a I can't say that on here, can I? I massively prefer like normal food, real food. I'll put either a flapjack or something in my back pocket if I'm going to go for a bike ride, or just not eat at all. Thank you very much for listening to me moan on about all the things that I hate about.
Right, yeah, to end off, I agree. I totally agree. I am not one for energy products in general. I tried energy drinks when I was a lot younger, when I first started riding and racing in a UK club. And I must admit, I bought a very expensive energy drink that was very strong orange flavour. It was like, you know, swigging a toxic chemical dump with orange flavour. And hey, it worked. You know, I felt full of energy.
Not the whole thing.
But I realised after a short period of time that the reason I felt full of energy was because the energy drink was literally just sugar. It was a bunch of minerals, some vitamins that they pumped in there in the powder, basically just sugar and a little bit of salt and flavouring. That's all an energy drink. It's not rocket science. That's all an energy drink is. And nowadays I make my own energy drinks, and I make them out of sugar and salt. And if I want to be really technical, I buy these little packets of rehydration minerals that usually people drink for if they get diarrhea and stuff, or you get dehydrated. They're these hydration packets, and they cost me 20 cents a packet. I will, of course, carry a couple of bananas in the back pocket, and I might even have nut bars, you know, general nut sweets, or like it says, flapjacks or something like that. My wife, bless her, she used to make me, when I was racing, she used to make me flapjacks. She'd make a tray of flapjacks for me that had honey, oats, raisins, dates, you know, all sorts of nuts in there. I love cashew nuts. I absolutely love cashew nuts. And she'd crush them all up, make these oat bars, stick them in a tray, bake them in the oven until they were a little bit firm, and then I'd wrap them in greaseproof paper, just fold them up in greaseproof paper and stick them in my back pocket. Right, folks, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Please leave in the comments what you think. Anything you want to add to the comments, any advice you want to give to other riders, it would be utterly appreciated. Please do check out the Buy Me a Coffee page if you want to support the channel. And like and subscribe. And, of course, don't forget to ride safe on your next ride. I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. And as
You know, when you came in, I was watching a Reginald Scott video.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the video. Yeah, I was just
I
watching.
really like Reginald.
Yeah,
it's a great guy. It's very funny. I watch all his videos. I watch all the videos of Reginald, George,